And welcome back to my channel. Unless you're new here, and then just welcome. My name is Rusty. This is my channel where I talk about my favorite movies, mostly horror. And we are going to move on now to this little slasher. Very unique movie. Very interested to talk about this movie. And that is In a Violent Nature. It was on my top list. Can't remember where it came in, like 9 or something like that. Which was the first time that I've seen this as well. In a Violent Nature. Got the collector's edition. Very nice. This release has got some cool stuff on it, including the first failed attempt to film this movie. They could barely get any scenes, and only one scene from that initial filming made it into this one, and that's because they could never get anything done. They were 9 weeks of torrential rain stopped them from being able to film the whole thing. I mean, you don't hear that too often, but the whole filming of this movie had to be scrapped because they could get nothing done throughout the whole filming of the first time that they did this. So they had to come back 2 years later and refilm the entire movie from scratch. So I watched that documentary, which was pretty cool, after I watched the movie, of course. So, In a Violent Nature is a slasher, released in 2024. It was directed and written by Chris Nash, stars Barrett, Andrea Pavlovic, and Cameron Love. Yes, it is, and was, what I just said. So, In a Violent Nature starts out with the vocal, anyway, group of guys. You hear them talking. They're at a collapsed fire tower in the middle of a national park. And they're talking about some kind of urban legend, some kind of myth about, or what they think is a myth, local myth, about a massacre that occurred here, and supposedly, is he autistic? Sort of like an autistic guy was bullied and killed here, and they find hanging over, on one of they find this really beautiful gold locket, and of course, being idiots, they take it and they leave and they go do their little camping thing. At which point we see he looks amazingly like Jason from, which one? I don't know. He looks amazingly like Jason from Friday the 13th Part 3. That's what this guy looks like. He looks like Jason from Friday the 13th Part 3 when you took the mask off. That's what this corpse looks like. And this is from 70 years ago, right? So you see this group, you get to kind of know them. We then see, the next day we see this. This movie is the cinematography in this movie is very, very unique, and it's very interesting. I've never seen a movie use long walking shots like this movie did. I mean, this killer, Johnny, he is like relentless, and I think that's what the long walking shots are supposed to represent, is the soldier-like relentless marching that this thing does towards his goal, and you would think, because like after the movie was over and I had to think about all of these directorial choices and cinematographic choices, I was like, those walking scenes were very interesting. I would think if you had asked me, hey, if this takes place in a movie, would it bother you? I'd have probably said, I don't know, that doesn't sound like I would like that. And yet I did. It really made its point. That's the point that I got out of it. But we see him like just relentlessly walking. He did spy on that group at the camp. And we hear a ranger, the ranger having some kind of argument because he comes out of the tree line and is walking towards this house. And I think that's like a house that he used to live in, maybe. But this guy is arguing with the ranger who's like going, I'm going to arrest you if I find any more of your traps. Because, it's illegal to put animal traps, like bear traps, the claw thing, out there in a national forest. And so he's threatening to arrest that guy. The guy's cussing him out. The ranger leaves. And this guy, or Johnny, goes in there. And he does see a locket, and he takes the locket. And then he looks in the mirror. I guess he has a memory. And you realize that locket was given to him by his mother. This isn't the locket, of course, though. It's just another locket that was in there. He then goes out, and that guy comes in and catches him, the one that was being bitched at by the ranger. And he shoots at him a couple times, and then he takes off running through the woods, and Johnny, doing that march thing, chases him down, and the dude steps in one of his own traps, which is very karmic. And he comes up to him, and you don't see what happens to him at that time. But then a few minutes later, when Johnny comes back walking that way, you see that he ripped that guy to shreds. He ripped his arms off and beat him to death with his own arms, and so his body parts are laid out there. So he tore him up. So you're like, okay, well, this guy's pretty vicious. What is he, right? He's a zombie. He's a reanimated corpse. So it's kind of supernatural, but then not really. It's more like zombie, a traditional zombie. Even walks like a traditional zombie, that stride. Of course, he's a little bit faster than the normal zombie. So that guy is killed. I think his name was Chuck. So we realize that this locket is Johnny's and that it belonged to his mom. And we have the campers, like I said, it was Colt and Troy, Chris, Aurora, Brody, Aaron, and Evan. So they talk about it, and Aaron tells the story. The guy Aaron, he tells the story, and this was the story. The father of Johnny owned the company store. If you've ever seen the movie Coal Miner's Daughter or anything like that, loggers and coal miners and all of that kind of stuff, these big corporations, they own these mining operations and these logging operations, the logging companies, mining companies. And the way that these scumbags hurt, well, they're slave labor. So just like in Coal Miner's Daughter, for instance, is exactly what was going on here. The workers go out and work their ass off. They're out in the middle of nowhere, so they can't get to the store or anything like that. So you have the company store. The company store has all the food and the equipment and the clothes and stuff like that. It's weird that the Loretta Lynn story in Coal Miner's Daughter is the exact same thing that's going on here. It's in a really bloody horror movie, but it's weird. But that's just a fact. They're both facts. So Johnny's father ran the company store. So of course everyone hated the company. And everyone hated him because he ran the company's store, which is like not really fair. You know, it's not like he was the company, he just ran the store. So they all hated him, and therefore they hated his son. His son was mental. And some guy tripped over one of Johnny's toys and broke his leg and was out of work for several months. So it like bankrupted this worker. That made him very angry. Him and a bunch of the other workers, they wanted to punish Johnny. It was like, that's so mean, right? So they tricked him into going out to this fire watch tower, you know, where the park rangers look for forest fires. Think Angelina Jolie and Those Who Wish Me Dead. So they trick him into going there, telling him that there's some toys up there. One of them, though, is actually waiting up there in an old 1918 or 1920, whatever it was, one of those old fire suits, which is what that is. That is a fire helmet from like 1920, right? And that claw, his hook, is what, you know, it had a chain around the firefighter's belt, and that's what they would climb the trees with, or that's what they would climb building with to rescue people back then. That's fire, you know, firefighter equipment from back then. So one of them was waiting up at the tower and was going to frighten him, scare him. Instead, they scared him so bad that he tripped and fell off to his death way down below. And then they you know, put this thing on him and made it out like he had done it himself, fucking around, even though the father knew that that was wrong. So the father got into like a fight with those guys, and those guys like shot and killed him, causing Johnny to reanimate in vengeance. So he's a vengeance demon is what he is. And he went in there, and all of a sudden the company didn't hear from this logging camp for a couple weeks, or a week or something. And they came to investigate radio silence, only to find everyone in the camp, most everyone, I think there was one survivor, like most everyone in the camp were dead, and they had been brutally butchered and ripped to shreds like we had seen happen to Chuck. So we had the mental imagery as to what that camp probably looked like, with 50 dead lumberjacks all ripped to shreds. So now we know the story of this vengeance demon, right? And obviously the locket, right, was keeping it. It was like the amulet or something that would keep it at bay. And when those idiots stole that locket, he was able to come back. It was the thing that was keeping that vengeance demon down, was his mother's locket. So that's the point of this movie. He wants the locket back. You understand what I'm saying? And he wants it back badly. So now it's, of course, our Pretty People in Peril's turns, which, to be quite honest, well, I don't know, a couple of them were cute, but it's not an attractive group of people. Very average group of people. But that's beside the point, isn't it? Who am I, a fashionista? But, you know, it's like I'm suddenly Joan Rivers on the red carpet. But I digress. So he starts like chasing them down, you know, one by one. The first kill was Aaron, which was like amazingly gross, because he like just, and they're scary kills too. I mean, because he's very, very, he don't waste no time. You know what I'm saying? There's not a lot of pussyfooting around. It's just all of a sudden you're like going, oh, I think he's gonna, oh yeah, he did. So you don't get a lot of time to think about it. But that was a bad kill, because he like put this, I don't know, think barbed wire, right, or something. Put it like across his mouth and like did the whole top of his head. And I'm like, you know what? There's another one of those decapitations. All My Friends Are Dead has that kind of decapitation in it. And I'm like, wow, it's interesting that in the same like month or so, I've seen 2 horror movies that had these half beheadings instead of a full beheading through the mouth, the top of the head instead of the whole head. Kind of interesting coincidence. But that was really gross. Aurora and Brody, they like each other. I've never heard of a girl named Brody, but her name is Brody. And so I guess Brody had been flirting with Aaron, and they're down there at the river, or at the lake. Or is it a river? No, it's a lake. And he's on one side, because he's like relentless. He's like Jason or a zombie. And he sees them down there, and they're like flirting at the thing, and she's like, oh, you came on too strong. I'm going to go do my yoga, and you go do your swim. Next time don't come on so strong. So she goes for a swim. Well, he just like walks out there in the water and disappears like Data in Star Trek Insurrection, where he just kind of walked and just slowly disappeared underwater. So he like guts her all up underwater. And then he comes on up the other side. And we get to this thing that is just, I was just mesmerized at the screen because I don't think I understood what I was seeing. And by the time I understood what I was seeing, I was like, that's very disturbing right there. To the point where my mind could not comprehend what I was seeing when I was seeing it. And that was the Aurora kill. Now, she had went a little ways from the lake, and it's like a gorge, like the Grand Canyon, like a very steep cliff. I don't know, it probably looked like 150 feet. It was very deep. So she was up there by it, and he just makes a beeline straight for her, and she hears the crunch of a twig, but she doesn't turn around because she thinks it's Brody, and so she's like, oh, I was wondering when you was going to come, and then she turns around thinking she's going to see Brody, and she sees this thing, right? She sees that thing, and she immediately turns and starts running. But where the fuck are you going to run? Which is something that she realizes in about 3 seconds, because she turns around to take off running and then realizes, that's about 30 stories. I don't think I can do that. So he's already on her, and she turns around and then turns back around, and I think that she was going to go ahead. No, let me not exaggerate. What was it? It was at least 15 stories. I don't think it was survivable by any means. I don't even think you could look down and think I could survive that. But at the same time, when you've got something that looks like that at your back, you're probably going to think, well, maybe I can fly. We'll see. Because I'm damn sure not living through that, right? But it's too late for her to make that choice and jump, because he's already on her. And that's what I meant by I suddenly got like really mesmerized, because I didn't expect for him to put his hand through her from the back, the small of the back, right through her and come out her stomach. And I'm like, okay, it's not like I've not seen something similar to that before, but I didn't expect it. But then he was like, well, I'm not true, because he's holding that hook and the chain. And so he puts his arm through her, and then she's just like looking down at it. And then he hooks that right at the top of her head, and I'm like, Okay. And then he starts pulling. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And then he starts pulling and pulling and pulling, and you see her spine kind of break and stick up and all of that. And I'm like, is he doing what I think he's doing? Because it looks like he's trying to pull her head through the hole. And I'm like, and then that's exactly what he was doing, and that's exactly what he did. And I'm like, he uses that hook and he pulls her down and sort of breaks her in half and pulls her head through that hole in her stomach out the back. And I'm like, you know what? That is some fucked up shit. And then he like unhooks her head and kicks her down the thing. And I'm like, you know, there is a part of me that I will admit exists that wishes I had not just seen that. I mean, it's like, you know, your mind just doesn't want to go there. I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to go there I didn't want to go there. But then again, you know, I was like, you're a horror movie fan, you know, go there. And I'm like, well, I had no choice. I've already been there. I mean, I saw it. I've been there. Yeah, but you don't want to think about it too much. I'm like, well, that's true. I don't want to think about it too much. But I have been there. You know? People go, I've never been to Disney World. Well, I've never been to that particular kind of murder scene either, but I just did. So check that off the list, right? So, you know, I wish I hadn't seen it, but then again, it's all right. I saw it. It's okay. I'm here. Didn't like cause me to be put away, so I'm all right. It wasn't a Baker Act moment. But yeah, that was a very, very intense, what the fuck was that? The Aurora death scene is something I will always remember. So it definitely made history, memory, you know, because it will always be there. I'm like, you're going to have to do some shit to top Aurora's death scene in a violent nature is what I'm saying. So, he ends up then moving on to the rest. Who's the next one that he goes after? Well, okay. This was fascinating scene in that he is coming up on the others and you hear Colt and Troy and Aaron. And Colt and Troy are like arguing. You don't see them, but you hear them because you're actually... This movie is filmed mostly from third person perspective, which is like, I don't know, I'm talking gamer talk now. Third person perspective is where you're like over the shoulder of the character that you're playing in a game. And so you're seeing him mostly from the back, right over his shoulder right here at what he's doing. You see him. It's not first person, it's third person. So you're standing right back here and you're watching, everything is filmed like over his shoulder. So you're seeing him from the back, his full body from the back and what he's doing. That's the cinematography of this movie. Not all of it, but a lot of the scenes are third person like that, which I thought was pretty cool. So you hear them fighting and, cause they like, Aurora's missing, Brody's missing, Aaron's missing, and they want to go look for the ranger, and one of them gets mad and throws the keys, and the keys land at Johnny's feet when he's approaching them. And this is what I meant by how fascinating this resurrected vengeance demon was and his mental aptitude, because that stopped him in his tracks because it had little doodads on it. And he actually stops and he picks up the keys and he sits down at the base of the tree and he takes his mask off. And I think that's when you first get to see him face to face. And he looks just like I said, he looks like Jason from Friday the 13th Part 3. It's very disturbing looking. And he is fascinated with the doodads that are on the keychain. There's a little red car and all of that. And he gets like a child. He gets, because he's got the mind of a child. That's how they were able to trick him 70 years ago up there and accidentally kill him. And it comes out at this scene because you almost feel sorry for him because he is so fascinated with the doodads on this keychain, and he's playing with the little card and stuff like that, and he's not really paying attention to them, but they're getting closer and closer to him because, you know, Colt's trying to find the keys where Troy had threw them. And once they get close enough, it brings him back, you know, because he's hearing their voices, and it brings him back, and he crushes the car. And it was almost a very deep thought moment in the horror movie because you're like, he's probably remembering being a child, and he's probably remembering, which made him remember what was done to him and what was done to his dad. And so he crushes the keys and throws them down because the vengeance is back, you know what I'm saying? And then he comes out, and the other two, they take off on the four-wheeler, Aaron and Colt. So Troy is left there, and Troy goes back to the little cabin they were at, and he follows, and that's when Colt turns around and they have this fight. Colt and Johnny have this fight, and he's got, you know, the hatchet and he's got the hook. So he like hatchets him in the leg, and he's going to cut him when the other boy comes out and shoots him, and Johnny falls. And you're like, well, it put him down for a minute. So he tries to get Troy up, and they start walking, trying to get away. And then all of a sudden Johnny sits back up, because of course he would. He sits back up, and he like I said, cinematography is very interesting in this movie because he throws the hatchet, and then you hear the other guy talking, and then all of a sudden he's not talking. And it takes a minute, because you're over the shoulder, it takes a minute for him to get up to the scene, and then that's when you see that other boy, he had got him right, split his head in half, you know what I'm saying? And then he goes up, what is it that he does to Troy? Oh, it's probably why I didn't remember there for a second, because yeah, now I see it. He turns him over, and he picks up a boulder that's like about this big, you know, and it's like a balloon popping, you know what I mean? He completely smashes his head into paste, and like it shoots out like strawberry jello. So he then digs through his pockets because he remembers seeing him put that locket in his pocket at the campfire. But there's no locket there, and there's no locket in the other one. So it's Colt and Aaron is the one of them has the locket. So, of course, Mr. Relentless, let's go find them. So then he walks up, and as he's walking up, you start to be able to hear Aaron, because he's gone to the ranger station. So as he gets closer and closer to the ranger station, you start hearing their conversation. And Aaron and Colt are telling the ranger, you know, these people are leaving. And then you hear the ranger start screaming at Aaron. You know, you hear him like going, where did you get that fucking locket? You know, and she keeps trying to continue her conversation. And he's like, no, where did you get that locket? And then they tell him, you know, it was on this thing, at the thing. And then he's like, oh my God. And then he fills them in. That story that Aaron had told was correct. His father, the ranger's father, was the lone survivor of that massacre. And 10 years ago, that ranger had put one of Jason's, you know, what was it, the White Pine Slaughter? So this ranger has dealt with Johnny before, and it was him that put him back in the grave the first time. So Johnny had done this murder, had been murdering all of this time, and 10 years ago, the ranger figured out what was going on, put Johnny at rest with that locket. Now these idiots come across and have basically released this demonic spirit back to doing his thing. So he tells them to run. He tells them what to get, like gasoline and chains and stuff, and tells them to meet him at that collapsed fire tower, and he would deal with this. So he sort of faces off against Johnny, and this isn't cool at all. Well, I mean, it's cool, but I mean, not to him. But so him and Johnny have this face off. Johnny gets him knocked down and then knocks him out. The other two escape, Colt and Aaron. And this was like, wow, again. Like I said, this movie is like, so got some really, wow, haven't seen that before. Kills in it. Because he goes up to the ranger, and the ranger can't get away, right? So he grabs the ranger like in this weird position right here in the between the shoulder blades, and you actually see him pull his spine, but pull it in a way that it doesn't come out. He just sort of like pulls it up, which I guess basically breaks his spine. So this dude is paralyzed. He's completely conscious. He's not unconscious. He's completely conscious. It's just that he can't move. All he can move is his mouth and his eyes. He is completely... So he drags him in there to a wood splitter. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a wood splitter. A wood splitter is this... It's a straight machine. And you would put the log here, and there's this that's shaped like that, and it will go down the middle of the log and split it in half, and you could do that to lumber, you could do that to a tree, whatever. So I was like, oh God, this isn't going to be pretty. And what's bad about it is that dude is completely and totally conscious. He can't do anything. He's paralyzed. And I'm like, how rude. You know what I'm saying? And now what I thought was going to happen was I thought he was just going to lay him on there like a tree. Like a tree. And then he was just going to have the thing come and just split him from the crotch up. That's what I thought he was going to do. And I was like, I don't want to see that. Please don't do that. But he didn't. Instead, he like dragged him over and he put his arm on it, and then he split his arm off, and then he turned him sideways and put his head up there and split his head off with it. And I'm like, well, that's better than what the other thing would have been. But I still say, if you wanted to make the kill, that's what I would tell the director. I'm like, dude, did you think of that? Because I'm telling you, it would have been a whole lot worse. It would have been a lot more gross if you had just laid him on the thing, on his back, and then let that splitter go right down his middle. I bet you didn't think of that, did you? I mean, cutting his arm off and then turning him sideways and cutting his head off, that was very painful to watch too, especially since he was alive, but come on. You have to admit, my idea is a hell of a lot more gross and painful to be split, paralyzed like that from the crotch up. I bet you didn't think of that. Somebody get this video to him and let him come and tell me if he thought of that. Because I think that would have been a hell of a lot worse. So anyway, he split him up, and then he went after them, and he caught up to them at right about where the tower was, and he's like, okay, look, you take the gas can and the chains, the trap, the bear trap thing, you take that and you go on over there to the tower, and I'm going to distract him. And I'm like, dude, really? Is that your plan? I have this little feeling after seeing this movie up to this point that I don't think you're going to be able to one-up this dude. And so he had made some noise, and so Johnny had turned around. Now she was supposed to be back here, going that way. And instead, he's like looking to the sides and all, and he's kind of just staring into the woods. And that dude, Colt, had snuck around him and was like right by him, like, by him, right behind him. And he all of a sudden is like, "That's right, motherfucker, come on." And before he could even finish that sentence, Johnny like split his whole head in half with that hatchet. And then he just kept smashing it and smashing it and smashing it, and then it fell on the ground. And he's just like, I know he chopped him like 35 or 40 times. Now, unfortunately for her, she did not do what he said, so she was standing right back there watching the whole thing. And it scared her so bad, or traumatized her, or whatever. She froze, right? But then she reached down, and she's like, well, you know what? Now that I think about it, I think I would have made the same decision. Because I think the conclusion that she came to was, I'm not going to be able to fight that. I'm not going to trap that. I mean, look at what he's doing to my boyfriend. What is that? Chop number 38, chop number 39, yeah, I'm not going to be able to fight that. So she took the locket off and she put it on the gas can and she put the trap down and she turned around and the bitch left. And she just had a breakdown as she was going and going and going. I know she ran for like an hour or two, and that finally daylight came. And she goes out onto the road, and this woman stops. And that was one of the most, it was excellent, but that was one of the most like anxiety-ridden 10-minute periods ever in a movie. Because, the woman picks her up, and they're driving down the road, and now she's bleeding. Because remember, she got cut really bad during the first altercation. And so this woman is telling her stories and stuff like that, and she's not very responsive. And you suddenly realize that, well, I bet this girl's bleeding out is what she's doing. And the woman finally notices it, because the girl won't talk to her much. Who could when you're like freaked out like that? So she actually stops the truck, and I'm like, no, don't do that. And interestingly enough, Erin did the exact same thing. She was like, wait a second, why are we stopping? And the woman is like, I thought something was, you're bleeding out. I have to stop the bleeding. And I said, well, you probably shouldn't have went radio silence on her, and she wouldn't have stopped the truck. But, when she stopped that truck, radio silence was over, because Erin is like, what the fuck are you doing? Now, that minute when she was, turned to the passenger side, and the woman is like fixing up her leg, she's just staring dead at that thing. And I'm telling you, I was so anxious that if somebody had come around here and banged the wall or something, I would have died right where I was sitting, which is here. But I would have fucking died. I just knew that bastard was going to come out of somewhere. That he was all of a sudden going to cut that woman's head off, or he was going to suddenly appear in the tree line. I mean, I was nervous as a virgin at a prison rodeo. That's how nervous I was during those few minutes when she stopped that truck. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, it's really cool when a movie can have you so nervous and anxious. That's what I love about horror, right? When a director and a cinematographer can make you so damn nervous with nothing going on, you know, because the whole nervousness of that scene was this dude is relentless, right? Now, it doesn't occur to you, well, maybe he's not coming after her as relentless, right? Because she did leave the locket. But yeah, during that minute, it was probably about it was way too long. It was way too much longer than it needed to be to scare me, because I know that when she did stop, come and start messing with her leg, I know that that little scene was at least like 3.5 of the longest minutes of my life, right? Because the terror on her face as she stared at the tree line was exactly what I felt, because I just knew that dude was fixing to cut them all to hell, and like he had done in this movie, quickly before I could like prepare for it. So, but it didn't happen, and they went on about their way, and then it kind of like zoomed back in on that gas can, the petrol can, where she had left that locket and the bear trap. It zoomed back in on that, and the locket was gone. But the petrol can and the trap was still there, but the locket was gone. And then the movie went off in this really strange end credit song that was really, really strange, called Ontario. It was a really strange and kind of disturbing song. It was some kind of folksy sounding song, but I didn't like it. I didn't like it because it made me feel weird. I'm not really sure. The lyrics just made me feel weird. But yeah, that was very, very strange. So that was In a Violent Nature. One of the most unique. The cinematography was like fantastic. The kills, I will never forget that Aurora kill. As long as I live, I will remember that kill, because that was just like amazing. So if you have not seen this, I would really suggest you check it out. It is an amazing movie, and they are making a sequel, because the page, even though there's nothing on it except the writer and director's name, the page for In a Violent Nature 2 is already on International Movie Database, so go and bookmark it, or, put it on your watch list, because they are making a sequel, which I am very happy about, because it damn sure deserves one. That was a scary fucking movie. This is a scary movie. And it was interesting cinematography, the long walking shots, the third person camera work. Like I said, not all of it is, but there's enough of it that it's a very interesting perspective to see a horror movie from. It's third person, because we see in 2D, but to have it positioned where the camera was positioned in the third person was very neat. I would say maybe 50% of the movie is third person, especially the long walking shots and all. So yeah, it's very interesting. Let me know if you've seen this. What do you think about it? It is a fantastic movie. Highly recommended for horror fans. Highly recommended for slasher fans. And yeah, I will see you in the final one coming up. Love you, miss you, bye. Always remember and never forget, you are a very special person. I gave this movie an 8.4 out of 10. So it got a 9. Or 8 or 9, whatever. Do I round up or down? But yeah, I love this movie. Absolutely fantastic. And I will see you in the final one of this little slasher fest. Bye-bye. Let me know what you think about this. It's amazing.